I am not a drama YouTuber. This isn't a drama thing. I liked Mogswamp, Super Flat World, whatever. It's not that I think his video is particularly egregious, it's really more that it just got me thinking about design philosophy, the game's development. Now, of course, I disagree with most of his points here. He has some good ideas, but I really just want to talk. I want to have a discussion. That's all. These are genuinely my opinions. I'm going to deliver them as straightforward as possible without dressing for drama or whatever. I recommend you go watch his video first, as I'm going to repeatedly reference it, but if you don't want to, I'll still try to make it easy to follow. Keep in mind, I'm not an expert, not a game designer. I've only been playing the game for 13 years non-stop, so take my opinions with a grain of rice. And before anybody says, yes, opinions on a game are subjective. If you're coming here and you're only going to take away the fact that opinions are subjective, then we've all wasted our time. So acknowledging that, let's talk about some theory, some philosophy about game design and block games and sandboxes. Okay, to start off, let's think about how Mojang has to fix their balancing issues now. They can't, and they won't, nerf anything, barring a very few minor exceptions. They can only make things more powerful or add even more powerful alternatives. There is a massive power scaling problem. And this is something Mogswamp very clearly agrees with. Not the recognition of it as an issue, but like this is the way that the game should be developed, I suppose. You'll see what I'm talking about as I go further on. I would also say that he has a vested interest in defending Mojang's development philosophy, because not only did he get to see behind the scenes of the Minecraft movie, but he's, I guess, like buddy-buddy with a lot of Mojang executives now, so he gets the benefits and they're all in the same circle. Also, I'm not going to buy his watches, but this is the most I'm really going to criticize the guy. His ideas behind how to fix the end revolve around a few things. The end should be desolate and alien feeling, the end should be more accessible, and the end is boring. It is boring, I agree, but the problem is that certain elements of Minecraft have been relentlessly scaled and added to and overpowered, while many other elements, like the end, are left behind. And I do like that the end has a barren feel to it. It's literally the end. It feels like it's the end of reality. I also agree that it could be improved while preserving that feeling of barrenness. Do I think Mojang has the ability or creativity to accomplish this? No. Do I think that Mogswamp's ideas stick to this principle? No. Something I thought was funny that he said is that he did a channel poll asking if people had ever been to the end in survival at least once. 24% of respondents said no. He uses this to say that the end is inaccessible, which he uses to come to his other conclusions. I think this is a pretty skewed result, considering that his fans very likely consist of young children. And I also honestly think that the type of people my age who watch this kind of content don't play the game very much. But that's an observation I won't be bothering to justify in this video. The question is whether Mogswamp's audience is proportionally representative of Minecraft players as a whole, and I would wager that it really isn't. But who knows? He also uses this example of a Japanese YouTuber who is playing the game completely blind to say that Minecraft isn't straightforward enough. When said Japanese guy actually found the end portal, he couldn't figure out what to do with it in a somewhat reasonable amount of time. And this is really just a non-issue, right? Because truthfully, there's a reason you don't see many playthroughs that are about going in totally blind with zero culturally absorbed knowledge of the game. The game is the most sold game of all time. It's incredibly culturally relevant. It's the subject of trillions of hours of YouTube content. The guy had to intentionally remain ignorant to any outside sources on the game. If you're a new player and you genuinely don't know what to do when you approach an end portal, you can very easily look it up. If you notice, that's kind of what everybody already does. It's what we did back in the day. We still do it today. That's just what you do when you don't know something about a game you're playing. So it's a bad example, I think. He also says players are not choosing to go to the end because they think it doesn't have enough content. I also have a hard time seeing how this could be the case. I mean, this could just not possibly be contributing to people never visiting the end. Just imagine being a casual player and then you finally get to the end portal and going, oh, I just can't bring myself to go through. There's simply not enough content. It's kind of a silly example, but I think his reasoning just falls apart if you really think about it. The end has the elytra. It's a very meta and extremely overpowered item. Even if the end is boring, people would still go through it just to get the elytra if they're somewhat competent players. So I think this just further proves my guess that most of Mogswamp's audience are very young children or don't really play the game. And this is skewing his ideas a little bit. Okay, with all that said, let's talk about the content changes he's suggesting. There's some stuff I agree with, or at least I think sound good in principle. I think he has a point that the end should have an ore. End binding could be awesome. I don't trust Mojang to handle the ores well, considering how netherite was handled. In my perfect world, the endite would be useful like iron is useful, or like how redstone is useful. As in, a very critical ingredient for important stuff. so not like copper. Anti-gravity properties are a cool idea. I think endite items can maybe not be affected by gravity so they don't fall. He has other good ideas. Teleportation-themed redstone is, I think, a creative and fitting idea, despite being wildly overpowered if not done correctly, which it won't be, for being honest. Imagine Mojang making the elytra in Icebelt roads irrelevant. That would be that would be hilarious. An end respawn anchor is an intuitive addition, I suppose. Cheese, which is stackable milk, which is kind of like not really relevant to anything else, so I think that's a good idea on its own merit. Totems of preservation, creative. I don't think any of these should actually be added though, except the cheese. I'll get into that later. Throughout this video, he also talks about Minecraft dungeons a lot, that the end should borrow from dungeons stylistically. You know, that's a good point. Dungeons is a very nice looking game. Kind of always liked it. The story is poor and there's no good characters, but the gameplay is nice, the music is good, and again, it's stylistically very beautiful. It makes sense that Minecraft will borrow a lot from whatever the creative team came up with for dungeons. Honestly, a lot of his ideas of what should be added is pretty much just everything that was added in the Nether update, but given an end reskin, and he basically admits this, and that's where he just loses me. I like the Nether update and all, but it honestly sounds like Mogswamp wants the end to be a second Nether. Also, damn, the dungeons texture just look ugly when they're ported over to real Minecraft. Minecraft's lighting engine sucks. It just sucks. It makes things look bland and washed out. Didn't used to be that way, but it is now, so whatever. Dungeons is a very vibrant game with a great lighting engine, but not only that, the levels are designed to be very close together and scaled down to the size of the player. Everywhere you go is intentionally scaled to your point of view. And Minecraft as a whole used to be this way, again, back in beta 1.7.3 and somewhat in pre-1.18 release versions. But Mojang decided they wanted their terrain to look good in screenshots instead of being good for gameplay. Again, I'm not gonna really get into that though. He talks about the dragon fight. The dragon fight isn't good because, as I said before, certain features have been relentlessly scaled while the dragon fight has remained stagnant and totally ignored. The dragon isn't the only thing that suffers from this issue. Consider just how many things players ask to be revamped these days because they're no longer useful or have been made irrelevant. Minecarts, horse riding, the enchanting table. It's a long list, and that's because Mojang is never ever consistent with its updates. Its entire focus is adding content, adding more content, we need more, and so many other stuff just falls through the cracks. Compare that to something like Vintage Stories development. This is a game I compare Minecraft to constantly. NVS's development, the entire game is considered whenever anything is added. Every feature of that game is in lockstep with the development. It retains an intricate progression system no matter how much new content is added, and the new content that is added is ultimately to serve the purpose of achieving the grand vision of what the game is supposed to be. So let's bring the conversation back to Minecraft. Ask yourself, does Mojang do this? Do they have that kind of passion or vision? Most of its developers don't even remember what is in their game or how to play it. They've literally said that more than once. Sorry, that was kind of ranty. He talks about bringing back the rascal from one of the previous mob votes. You might be familiar with it. I think it is a dumb idea, and it lost for a reason. It doesn't fit into the progression at all. It just doesn't have a place. Just like copper. A mob that's entire purpose is to occasionally hand you a useless item is dead on arrival. It will be novel one time and then never again, kind of like a lot of new features these days. Not only that, but we just don't need more loot. Minecraft has a loot problem. It's one of the core issues with its progression systems. The developers seem to think that more ways to loot, better types of loot, making loot more common, is just the only way to drive the game forward. This is present in every single update since Microsoft bought the game. More loot, more loot, more loot. We don't need more. We need new survival mechanics and balancing. So although this is a brief point in his video, I totally disagree with that and anything else this philosophy can be applied to. Just generally as well, because as I said earlier, Mogswamp thinks the game is too hard. A lot of his ideas just revolve on making the end easier. Sure, he thinks the dragon fight should be more challenging, but I mean that he thinks the end as a dimension should be an easier place to live. He wants to add nether chickens that you can eat and a way to respawn and beings you can trade with and mobs you can fly on and ores that diminish the danger of the void. They're not bad ideas, but I think a huge part of the end is that it's not livable. When you go on an adventure there, you better hope you bring enough materials to last you the journey and to get out, because if you don't, you're screwed. It's like the Arctic explorers of old. They had to bring what they needed with them because the environments they were going to were next to impossible to live off of. It required a lot of preparation, it required a lot of skill. Being stranded in an endless wasteland with no resources is a real danger that should motivate you to adequately prepare and be on your toes. Adding all this livability to the end would totally diminish that. It might still look like an alien wasteland or whatever, but the core part of that gameplay would be lost. I think that if there is an end update, it should be entirely focused on making it more challenging, more balanced, and keep the idea of a literal wasteland in mind, not just aesthetically. To hammer in some points, adding an end chicken that gives you magic eggs that can teleport mobs. Mob transportation is one of the remaining grindy parts of the game. It's a challenge and there's a lot of ways to do it, whether it's via minecarts, leashes, or portal networks. So if you're just going to add an egg that teleports them right to you, and to make that egg incredibly easy to obtain, it's kind of an OP and bad idea. Same goes for the End Strider. He just wants to make the end easier, as I said. In fact, the entire Mojang staff just wants to make the game... the entire game hold your hand, but whatever. I mean, think about it. The Elytra is overpowered as it is. You really want to make it even easier to obtain? He also said that he wants end ships to have multiple Elytras via the trial chamber spawner things, which is a little funny to me, but whatever. I don't want to be too harsh. He talks about adding multiple structures. I think the idea of adding a new big dungeon as a challenge to the player is a good idea, I guess, provided you severely nerf the existing end cities. However, I can't help but think that all of this directly contradicts him saying he thinks the end can have all this stuff and still be desolate and barren feeling. All the things he wants to add just make the end feel incredibly lived in and populated. Clearly, I think there's a right and a wrong way to do it. I like the totally abandoned feel that the end has. I think a big dungeon with a challenge that's been left behind by some long extinct society is a better way to think about it. And again, he keeps coming back to making the Elytra easier to obtain. He wants to add little structures with maps that lead you to them. No. After watching over his whole video, I don't think this was so much about his predictions for the end update as much as it was what he personally wants in the game. But that doesn't really matter, I just figured I'd point it out. Oh yeah, and a quick note. I said earlier that the end is like this place you travel through where you need to be stacked in order to survive. At some point, Mojang added end gates that return you to the main island everywhere, which admittedly kind of lessens this idea, but I still believe the spirit of that idea should be held to. Okay, I think I mentioned everything. The reason I'm somewhat concerned on this issue is because I've long said that a proper end update would be the only thing that would get me to play modern Minecraft again. However, while updating the end is probably pretty likely in the future, I've lost faith that it would actually be good. So, you may be wondering, I clearly have a lot of opinions and critiques of this guy's ideas. What do I think that the end update should contain? I have some ideas. More challenges, push the end cities further away. I think aesthetic improvements can be made like Mogswamp wants, but it should remain barren. A core part of the end, in my opinion, is that you need to prepare ahead of time to travel through it, otherwise you're stuck and basically screwed. I think the end should have a useful ore. As I said earlier, useful like iron or redstone is useful, as in that it's a core ingredient for important stuff. But that ore should be practically useless until you exit the end dimension. I do not think that the end should be a second nether, or that it should be more livable. The existing loot tables need to be majorly nerfed. Mogswamp talks briefly about adding some of the enemy mobs from dungeons, and I think that's a good idea, I think. You could have different types of endermen that correspond to different types of end biomes. It would just be a way to diversify the existing enderman population a little bit, add a little bit more challenge. So I like that idea. Now the dragon fight, because this is a core part. I think it needs to be way harder so that it scales properly with all the new weapons and techniques that have been added to the game over the last 10 years. It would be really cool if fighting the dragon required that you've mastered all the other areas of the game. Like there's a section of the fight that requires the mace, or the trident, or some netherite tool, or a skulk thing. Just having that would instantly make the mainline progression and the end dragon fight way more compelling. And again, balancing would be necessary for all these areas. Overall though, it's not up to me. I don't control the game. All I can control is what I play, and I'm gonna keep playing alpha. We'll see what happens, and again, this wasn't an attack on Mogswamp. I don't really believe in attacking people for stuff they say on YouTube. Really more that it just got me thinking, and again, an end update is the one thing that might convince me to play Modern again. So I think about this stuff a lot. So apologies to Mogswamp if I sounded rude. Let me know what you guys think, if you agree, disagree, if you have your own opinions or suggestions of what could be in the end. Bye.